Good morning. This is Commodore Sam coming to you. I've got another video for you today. We're going to look at a new accelerator reproduction, and let's get started. So what we're talking about today, as you might have noticed from the title, is the TurboMaster CPU, specifically the V3. Now, before I get into the details of this, I do want to add that this is not a paid sponsorship. I paid for this with my own money, and no one has reviewed this video or anything before it was uploaded. So these are my own opinions. So the TurboMaster CPU V3. The original TurboMaster was created back in the 80s, very early on, by a company called Schnedler Systems. Now, they came out with some mods of ROMs that were available. Jiffy DOS even created a ROM for it back in the day, and so you could kind of get it with various ROMs. But what it does is an accelerator. It's a CPU accelerator. So the Commodore 64 with its 6502 or 6510 runs at just over 1 megahertz. Well, the TurboMaster had a 65C02 that was clocked at just over 4 megahertz. And so about 4 times faster than the Commodore 64 stock. Now, with the additional ROMs in it, it also adds GEOS to the mix, and so we'll see that in a few minutes. But one interesting thing about it is it was a early version of Jiffy DOS that was modified for this device, like most Jiffy DOS ROMs are, modified for each device. But it was version 5, and I guess by the time Schnedler Systems stopped making the TurboMaster, which was, it didn't last a long time. By the time they stopped producing it, I think later on the version 6 and all that with Jiffy DOS, moved on. But anyway, this one particular here was recently reverse engineered by Core i64, and this particular one is a prototype of what he sells today. The one he sells today is in a metal case. It's got a black circuit board with gold pins and or traces. Whereas this one does not. It has the cheaper board in it, but but it functions in every way. This was a final prototype, not one of the early prototypes. So this was a final prototype, and it works just like the new ones do. There will be a part 2 to this video where I will dive into some of the deeper software products that will run on the TurboMaster. I have a new one with the metal case on the way. So probably by the time that we get to part 2 of the video, I will have that in my hands as well. But this one's the plastic case prototype model. Just wanted to make sure you were aware of that. And so the TurboMaster came in a lot of different, came with accessories. There was a lot of different ways that you could hook it up. You can hook it into the cartridge port just like it is. It's plugged into the back of the Commodore 64 like you would imagine. And operate just fully on this, and your basic programs will run at 4 times their normal speed. But you can turn the accelerator on or off with these switches and make some other changes, and we'll get into those details. But you could operate it just like that, turning it off or on, whichever way you want. But most people today, maybe a lot different than back in the day. Back in the day, most people didn't have a lot of RAM expansion or anything like that, and they just played games. But in today's world, you want a RAM expander and everything else on your Commodore. Otherwise, an REU on your Commodore, some sort of expansion so that you can do something. with the modern applications that are being created. So what you would normally do is throw on a expander, and you could plug in multiple cards into the back of your Commodore. So you would have this slotted in there and plugged into the back of your Commodore. Well, and then you would come in behind it and put some sort of RAM expansion. This is a Neo RAM. And plug that Neo RAM, or you would plug an REU in. Now with the accelerator, this is a perfectly acceptable configuration, a Neo RAM or a Geo RAM with the Turbo Master plugged into it. But it will not work, just the way the circuit works and everything will not work with an REU this way. So what do you do about that? Well, back in the day, Schnedler came out with the master adapter, and the master adapter would allow you to hook up that RAM expander without having an REU or a Neo RAM, either one, or Geo RAM at the time back in the 80s. It would allow you to plug that in and use both. And without having to buy the other expander. So just as a side note on these, this has jumpers on it. I think he's got switches maybe on the newer one. Again, this was a prototype. But anyway, you set these jumpers to be either REU or Geo RAM. And then you either plug it in one of these two ports, depending on which one it is. So if you're using the master adapter and you want to plug in the a Neo RAM or a Geo RAM, you would plug it in like this and then slot it in the back of your in your cartridge port on your 64. Now, if you and you would set the jumpers for Neo RAM, and they go one side for one and one side for the other. If you were wanting to run an REU, it's a slightly different configuration. You set the jumpers for the REU. You slot the Turbo Master into the top slot, and then you plug in your REU on the bottom, and you slot it in. Now you'll notice it's almost the same footprint. The original ones were this same footprint, and they obviously copied the REU footprint, or the REU footprint copied them. Who knows which? But you could slot this in and just sit it on top, and it makes a nice stable environment. Everything sits on your tabletop just fine, and the Turbo Master sitting on top of your REU that way. One thing that I noticed in my use of it is I actually have a CMD 1750 XL. Now, if you use a smaller cartridge like that, and remember, this is still an REU. It's a reproduction of the Commodore REUs. So you still have to have it in this configuration where the REU's on the bottom and the accelerator's on the top, and the jumpers are set properly. But as you can tell when you look at this, doesn't look quite as stable. And so this is this configuration is maybe not ideal. You wouldn't want this pressure always sitting and pulling down on the port, or at least I wouldn't anyway. So what I did was I made a little foot to go on the bottom of this so that it would sit flush on the and not be pulling on the port. You can deal with that however you like. That's my preference. Certainly, if you're running it in the Geo RAM or the Neo RAM scenario, you wouldn't need a foot. You would just plug in on the bottom like that. And so that works really well. Again, can't plug this in the top, but it does work really well with a Neo RAM or a Geo RAM, and it sits just fine. So that kind of covers just some of the configurations so that you could get a good view of it, because it's going to be harder to see when I put it in the back of my 64. So let me rearrange, plug this up, and give you some demos to look at. Okay guys, I'm back. I've got everything set up for our first demo. So the first demo, what I have here is I have that 1750 REU plugged in directly, no other, nothing else going on in the cartridge port. I do have a UIEC device for loading up the programs that we're going to run, and a pretty standard Commodore 64, although the case is not standard. And so what we're going to do first is, if you have an REU, you know that the REU utilities disks that come with it have the world demo that spins around, and I thought it would be interesting for you to see that. But before I get started, I do want to point out that I am running Jiffy DOS from a ROM inside the 64. The Turbo Master supplies Jiffy DOS version 5. The ROM I have in here is Jiffy DOS version 6, so a modern Jiffy DOS ROM. So we're going to load this up with Jiffy DOS, comparing Jiffy DOS to Jiffy DOS, because I'm really trying to showcase the Turbo Master itself and what it'll do. And so I want as close to an apples to apples comparison as I can get. It's a little unfair comparison because I'm in a newer version of Jiffy DOS here. So anyway, on the card of the UIEC, I've got the standard file browser. I'm going to go down to 1764, and I'm going to go down to the world test. Again, most of y'all are the globe test. Most of y'all are probably aware of that. Now, the way the globe and the REU works is it first loads, or this demo on the REU, it loads the REU up with data first, and then it plays the images. Slideshow really fast is basically how it's animating. So the first thing that happens is it loads in, and you can see it's about 1 a second, right? So it takes about 36 seconds for this for all the 36 images of the world, or the globe, to load into the REU. Once they're all loaded, it'll start playing them in succession and to show you the animation. So as you can see, back in the day when this when the REUs were put out and they demoed this in your local Commodore store, that was a pretty amazing demo, because you had something moving really fast on the screen that maybe hadn't been that way previously. By today's standards, this demo is pretty bad, right? Not anything awesome, but it's a good demo for the period correct time that the Turbo Master would have been around. And so there is the world. So let's reconfigure now with the Turbo Master. Okay, we've got the Turbo Master plugged up, the Turbo Master V3. Remember how we had it configured before when I showed you unconnected, so you could see how it stacked up. Basically, I've got the master adapter on here. I've got the 1750 REU on the bottom. I have the Turbo Master V3 on top. All switches to the right. Again, we'll get into switches later, but basically everything enabled. Now, one of the things you'll notice right off the bat, this Jiffy DOS version is version 5.0. Again, the Jiffy DOS that I have in this computer that we're comparing it to was 6.0. By having the cartridge plugged in, it inserts its own Jiffy DOS into the mix and overrides what's on this PC, on this 64. If I disable the Turbo Master while it's plugged in, or not while it's on, but but if I disable it and turn the computer on, it would be back to the old Jiffy DOS that I have inside the computer. Or if you didn't have Jiffy DOS, it would be back to your normal ROM that you have in your computer. So anyway, back to our demo. We're going to do the same thing we did before and load up our file browser, go to the 1764 disk and run the globe. And I'm going to say yes. And you'll notice that this is much faster. This loading into the REU, I would say, is about twice as fast. I don't think it's 4 times as fast. I haven't timed it, and maybe I'll put a time on these videos so that you can see it. But it's quite a significant speed increase in the loading. Now here's where you really notice that the REU is running. The Turbo Master is running, right? That world is spinning much faster with the Turbo Master accelerator. Now, I'm not sure what limit we're at. Like the loading, like I said, the loading of the REU was only, the appearance was it was only about twice as fast. This, I am not sure. It's kind of hard to tell. Is this 4 times faster? Is this 2 times faster? It's very difficult to say. I guess I could try to time the when I see the South America right here in the middle. Maybe I could do that, or Africa, or some wherever you are and whatever you recognize. If you could figure out the cadence, then maybe you could figure out exactly how fast it is. And again, maybe I can do that in post edit, but much faster, no question about that. How much faster? That's the question. We may be at the limits of the data transfer for the Commodore, because if you know how the REU is working, this is shifting data back and forth inside the memory here. And that we may be at the physical limit of that. I'm not sure. But anyway, faster. Next demo. Okay, for our next demo, I have the Turbo Master disabled by turning the switch off. It's still plugged in, but I've got the switch off. And since I have the switch off, I booted up to my internal Jiffy DOS that's running in this machine. So for this demo, I wrote a short little basic program that we're going to run called SPDTST. It's about as simple as you can get. If I list it, you'll see that it basically is just capturing the time variable into A. It's counting from 1 to 1,000, capturing the time variable again in B, subtracting the 2, and printing the results. And so we'll get an integer result with this. And so I won't go into all the time of how Commodore keeps time, all that kind of thing, but just know the number means something, right? So I'm going to run this. Now it's going through the for next loop and printing the value of X on the screen here, 1 to 1,000. And so if you've ever used Commodore Basic, you know that it's fairly slow. Just a simple operation of counting to 1,000 can be quite mundane, quite slow. If you're painting a whole screen, it can be really slow. So most programmers programming games and everything eventually switch over to using assembly or straight machine code and abandon Basic pretty quickly. However, Basic is really great for doing real simple things, simple tests, and things that you don't need speed for. You certainly can write it faster, and certainly for the beginner programmer, it is much it's much easier to learn than other languages. So anyway, it counted to 1,000, and you can see that the difference between the time variable was 2,700 plus, right? And so that's what that looks like. Now I'm going to switch the switch to enabled, and when I do that, it reboots the machine. It does a reset, and if you think about why, it's actually switching to the ROM that's inside of the Turbo Master, and you can see that it supplied Jiffy DOS 5.0. So we're going to do the same thing. Now, one interesting thing about Jiffy DOS 5.0, if you hit the F1 key that normally displays the directory, in Jiffy DOS 6, it automatically enters that. In Jiffy DOS 5, you actually have to hit enter after you've hit F1. So it supplies the shortcut, but you still have to hit enter. but most everything else works the same. It's pretty close to standard Jiffy DOS. I'm still going to use. I still have my wedge commands, if you will, where I can load those, and you can see I've got the same program loading in that I did before, and I'm going to run that. But this time, notice the speed. Last time we got 2702 as our end result. You can already tell that it's counting much faster, and almost to the point to where you have a hard time seeing that you see that second digit going around pretty fast. You can't even see the third digit of the hundreds when it's counting. And notice you're at 825. So what percentage is that? So the you were at 2700 and now you're at 825. You can see that it's about 4 times faster when it's running with the Turbo Master. And that's just a simple basic program, and it run a whole lot faster. So you can imagine if you have this and you want to play around with BASIC and you want to test your program, it's pretty nice. And then when you're done testing and running and all that, if you want to see what it'll look like running for someone that doesn't have a Turbo Master or some other accelerator, you can see what it looks like running at normal speed as well. Okay, our next demo here, I have got a program loaded in. I didn't bother showing you me loading it in, but I've got a program loaded in here that's a demo that comes on the Turbo Master disk, and it's called Speed Demo. And if you list the program, I'm just going to list the first 200 lines. The name of it is Speed Switch Demo. It basically clears the screen and then draws a series of diagonal and vertical lines on the screen in color. And it switches back and forth from fast to slow using poke commands. So when it gets down here to, it runs a go sub routine depending on which mode it's in, and it'll run down here and switch back and forth from 1 megahertz to 4 megahertz, and it issues these poke commands here to do that switching, and then draws normal or fast on the screen to tell you which mode it's in. So that's pretty much all this program is doing, is just drawing to the screen, and it's switching back and forth programmatically. Whereas before, when I was running my 1 through 1000 demo and counting the time, this one just switches back and forth with a software method. So I wanted you to see how that works. So I'm going to run that, and you'll see it picks a color. It starts drawing on the screen in normal mode, and so this would be in the 1 megahertz mode. And then when it finishes drawing pretty much almost a whole screen, it switches to fast. And so now it's switched into the 4 megahertz mode. And so you can see how screen painting would work on a basic program, normal versus slow, or normal versus fast. Sorry. And so you can really see the difference in speed pretty well here. So that's another demo. Part 2 is going to go a little bit deeper into software. As I said before, the internet doesn't have a lot of compatibility lists or anything yet for the Turbo Master, but maybe now that it's been reproduced by Core i64, more people will get it, and maybe some more software will be written for it, or we'll have a better list of what software is out there that would run on it. So with that, I'm gonna end this video. This is just kind of a little bit of a teaser video to get your juices flowing on that. And again, the next time we will look at this a little more in detail, a little more software rather than just basic programs. That globe was a basic program using the REU. This was a basic program not using the REU. We showed how you can kind of enable it, disable it, and what those how that works with the system. When you do have it enabled, this little tidbit can get your mind wrapped around how it's working, but it actually is becoming the CPU of this machine. So when I'm running this basic program, it's running off of the CPU inside the Turbo Master. That's why the title, or the maker called it the Turbo Master CPU. Now, of course, our reproduction doesn't have that written on there exactly. It just says Turbo Master V3. Again, it's a reproduction by Core i64, and he's made some good improvements to it. In fact, I'm going to link in the comments below the video on YouTube an article that he published about it on AmigaLove.com. So see that link below. Anyway, it's again my next video. I hope to have the latest version, the non-prototype version, the actual production version, and I'm going to go deeper into the software. So until next time, thanks for joining me. See ya.